Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've been following along with William Weaver's The Logos War, specifically Book 1, The Great Unraveling, we've just come through some intense chapters.
Yeah, the first 5 chapters were really deep in Jaron Miles's world, his scientific obsession, chasing that signal.
Right, culminating in Chapter 5 with the actual discovery or maybe creation of the Synton. Just incredible stuff.
But that kind of intense focus, well, it needed an equally intense reaction, didn't it? And that's what Chapter 7, The Order of Operations, delivers.
It really does. It's like the whole stage just pivots. We're not just in Jaron's lab anymore.
No, this chapter formally introduces the opposition. This massive, very secretive organization, continuity, and crucially, we meet its driving force, Helen Castor.
Exactly. Chapters 1 to 5 felt like this internal, almost philosophical science struggle. Chapter 7 just drops us right into the external conflict. It's organized, it's global, and it feels cold.
It's a total shift in atmosphere.
Right.
We go from, like you said, Jaron's annex, you can almost smell the ozone in the equipment, to these pristine, almost sterile command centers of continuity.
And the core of it is this fundamental clash of worldviews between these two figures, Jaron and Helen.
Absolutely. Jaron is all about emergence, isn't he? He believes complexity, even meaning, just arises naturally from the universe's chaos.
He's digging for that underlying grammar, the Synton, the logos, even with all the risks that come with it.
And Helen Castor, she's the polar opposite. The book is so clear about this. To her, emergence was a seductive lie. That's a direct quote, and it says everything.
It really does. She sees the universe, especially human systems, as inherently flawed, just waiting to break down.
Yeah, and her solution, which this chapter spells out, is control. Rigid, unforgiving, and absolute control of the system. That's her mantra.
So Chapter 7 is essentially the antagonist's origin story, you could say, but laid out with this almost engineering precision.
Exactly. So our mission today, really, is to unpack that origin. How did continuity start? How do they operate? And most importantly, why do they see Jaron's breakthrough, this particle of pure syntax, as, well, an existential threat?
Not as the amazing discovery we saw in Chapter 5, but as something that needs to be stamped out.
Right. Why is it a bug, not a feature, in their worldview?
Okay, so let's dig in. The book anchors Helen Castor's entire philosophy to one specific, very public moment of failure. We need to start there.
Yeah, we absolutely have to start with the Challenger disaster. It gets a mention in Chapter 6, but Chapter 7 really defines it as the moment that shaped Helen.
The source material has that line, did not break Helen Castor, it completed her. That's powerful. That image, that public failure became her life's defining axiom.
And this is where the contrast with Jaron becomes so stark. It's not just about their scientific fields, it's fundamental psychology.
Right, think back to Chapter 4. Jaron hits his own failures, right? His early experiments, they literally blew up in his face. Scorched equipment, systems failing.
What did he do?
He innovated, he scavenged, he redesigned, he came up with that amazing fractal heatsink, the multispectral lens. Failure pushed him to get smarter, to engage more deeply with the complexity.
Yeah, failure spurred him towards finding a more elegant solution within the chaos. Helen's reaction is the complete opposite.
How so?
She doesn't try to innovate around the failure point. She studies it to eradicate it. She wants to build a system above the failure, one that prevents that state from ever occurring.
So the Challenger tragedy for her wasn't primarily about the human loss, the astronauts.
The text is brutal here. It says she approached it not as a human disaster, but as a data set, a work of autopsy. It's incredibly cold, that phrasing.
Wow. Okay, so it's like removing the emotion, the human factor entirely, reducing it to systems analysis.
Precisely. It strips away all the messy stuff, grief, bravery, the pressure, and just sees a cascade failure in a complex system.
And this leads directly to her graduate thesis.
Exactly. Predictive modeling of cascade failures in complex, closed-state systems. It sounds dry, but it's the blueprint for continuity.
She traces the whole failure chain, the O-ring, the cold weather. But she says the root cause wasn't the physical part itself.
No, and this is the key insight that gets her noticed. She argues the real failure was the lack of a meta-level governor.
A meta-level governor? What does that mean exactly?
Basically, an automated control layer that could have overridden the flawed human decisions driving the launch forward. The political pressure, the PR, the schedule. She saw these as flawed initial conditions that the system itself couldn't correct.
Wait a minute, that seems like a huge leap. She's going from one specific, albeit terrible, instance of management pressure overriding safety data
to concluding that human decision-making itself is the fundamental flaw in any complex system.
Yeah. Isn't that basically arguing for, well, a kind of technocratic tyranny. How does the book make that logical step plausible for her character?
It frames it through her lens of seeking systemic perfection. For Helen, the O-ring failure wasn't just a technical issue exacerbated by bad management. It was proof that the entire system of governance, including the human element, was inherently unstable.
So the technical failure was just a symptom.
A symptom of the chaotic, variable humanity messing things up. In her view, complex systems, when exposed to human emotions, politics, ambition, they inevitably drift towards catastrophe.
The system needed to protect itself from us.
Exactly. It needed to govern itself, shielded from the very people it served. That's the core belief.
And that's the ideology of continuity right there. It makes sense then that someone noticed this thesis.
Right after it's published, in some obscure journal, Elias Vance shows up. The book implies continuity had, like, feelers out, digitally searching for keywords related to her ideas.
Keywords like cascade failure, meta-level governor.
Yeah, and Vance himself is described as intentionally forgettable, right? Like the perfect sysadmin operating in the background.
He doesn't waste time. He basically tells her, that governor you wrote about, we're building it.
And his recruitment line is just chillingly matter of fact. We are, for lack of a better term, planetary scale systems administrators.
Systems administrators, not protectors, not leaders, just running the machine.
And viewing humanity as the primary source of errors, maybe even as malware on the system.
Wow, okay.
It's this shared belief within continuity. Humanity is the chaotic variable destined to crash its own operating system. Continuity sees itself as the essential hidden safeguard.
Not villains in their own eyes. They're performing necessary maintenance to stop us from destroying ourselves.
It's a dark worldview, but it's internally consistent for them. They're saving the world by taking away the controls from the beings who keep making mistakes.
And this abstract idea, this governor protocol, it needed a real-world test case to prove it worked.
And they get that chance pretty quickly, it seems.
Oh.
Winter of '91. This is Ellen's first major assignment, moving her theory into practice.
The target is the Pacific DC intertie. I remember reading about this. It's that massive tower line, right?
Yeah, huge, high-voltage DC line carrying power from the hydro dams in the Pacific Northwest down to Southern California, where all the demand is. It's a critical piece of infrastructure for the entire West Coast.
Okay, so what was the problem?
Continuity's modeling, which the book stresses was way ahead of anything public, detected a really subtle potential flaw. Not exactly a bug in the software code itself, but a vulnerability in how the system responded under very specific conditions.
Like a hidden resonance.
Sort of. They predicted that a rare combination of things, peak electricity demand, certain weather patterns, maybe some harmonic frequency issues, could create this runaway feedback loop.
And that would cause...
The entity trips offline. But because it's so central, it wouldn't just be a local outage. It would cascade. The entire Western power grid could collapse.
Millions of people in the dark. Way bigger than famous blackouts we've seen. And the official utilities, they had no idea this was even possible.
Completely blind to it. The threat was too subtle, too dependent on a complex interaction of factors their models couldn't see.
So this is Helen's chance to deploy her governor. What did she do? Call the power companies? Warn them?
No way. That's not the continuity method. She works in total secrecy for weeks. And she creates this tiny, specialized bit of code. A parasite algorithm.
The book calls it a ghost in the machine.
Which is just the perfect description, isn't it? Something unseen, existing only to enforce control.
So what did this ghost actually do? Did it rewrite the flawed utility software?
That's the ingenious and scary part. No, it didn't fix the underlying potential problem. It just managed the system to prevent the trigger conditions. Its only function, its entire purpose, was to infinitesimally throttle the power flow for less than 0.3 of a second.
Wait, that's it? 0.3 of a second? That sounds like nothing.
It's almost nothing, but it was precisely calculated. That tiny momentary dip in power was enough to break the positive feedback loop before it could even start building momentum.
And crucially,
it was completely undetectable by the human operators monitoring the grid. They'd see it as like a tiny sensor flicker, background noise, nothing to worry about.
So the system appears to be running normally, but it's actually being subtly governed by Helen's code.
Exactly. It didn't cure the potential disease. It just perfectly, silently managed the symptoms so the crisis never manifested.
That is deeply unnerving. Because if the crisis never happens and no one knows it was ever a possibility,
then there's no debate, no oversight, no accountability. Continuity's control remains invisible.
And the book says this success, this silent control, was the most satisfying moment of her life.
Yeah. It completely validated her whole philosophy. For Jaren, discovery comes from noise, from embracing the chaos to find the signal, the synton.
For Helen, success is silence. If the system is quiet, predictable, stable, then it's working. Then it's controlled.
It's perfect.
Okay, let's tie this back to the bigger picture. Jaren discovers the synton in Chapter 5, this particle of pure syntax, the universe's own emergent grammar.
Right, the code underlying reality, allowing complexity and meaning to arise naturally. The universe writing itself.
And Helen, with this ghost protocol, is doing the exact opposite. She's installing her own imposed grammar, her order of operations.
She's not trying to understand the universe's language. She's installing a firewall against its perceived dangers, specifically the danger of human fallibility.
Jaren finds the source code of reality. Helen installs the hidden admin password on human civilization's infrastructure.
It's an unavoidable collision course. These two aren't just going to disagree. They represent fundamentally opposing forces acting on reality itself.
The Intertree was a successful test, but it was regional. Helen and Vance, they were thinking bigger, weren't they? Planetary scale?
They needed a global opportunity, a way to install this governor protocol everywhere, all at once.
And as Helen's influence and continuity grows, her attention turns to the biggest emergent system of all, the Internet.
Which, the book says, literally gave her nightmares. All that uncontrolled growth, that horrifying emergence. She saw it as the ultimate chaotic variable, just generating potential failures constantly.
She needed a lever, a way to impose order on that digital chaos.
And then comes Y2K, the Millennium Bug. It was like the universe handed her the perfect tool.
But continuity saw it differently than most, right? Not just as a coding problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They recognized it wasn't primarily a technical challenge. Helen knew the date field problem was fundamentally solvable. Tedious, expensive, but solvable by ordinary programmers.
So what was the real issue in their eyes?
The perception, the narrative, the public perception of Y2K, a narrative of technological apocalypse. That's where the vulnerability lay.
They realized they could weaponize the fear of collapse.
Precisely. They understood that widespread panic would make governments and corporations drop their defenses in a way no hacking attempt or political maneuvering ever could.
That's a chillingly brilliant strategic insight.
So starting around 1998, they launched what the book calls a grand psychological operation.
They didn't create the panic out of thin air, though.
No, and that's the terrifying elegance of it. They didn't need to lie. They just amplified the existing legitimate fear. They provided carefully curated threat assessments,
Using what?
unimpeachable data, and flawless models. They told the truth, but they framed it in the absolute worst-case scenario, backed by solid-looking evidence. They made the potential disaster feel inevitable.
So the global panic that many of us remember from the late 90s, continuity helped manufacture that, not with lies, but with weaponized, perfectly presented truth.
Essentially, yes. They used the reality of the coding problem to create a narrative of impending doom that felt completely real and unavoidable.
And that engineered panic became the key.
It was the Trojan horse. Governments, banks, airlines, utilities, everyone was terrified of digital Armageddon. They were desperate for solutions.
And continuity was right there, offering help.
Offering their expert teams, their sophisticated diagnostic tools, their patches, their system upgrades. And the world basically threw open the doors and begged them to come in and save them.
Okay, so what were these fixes that continuity was installing? They fixed the date problem, presumably?
Oh yeah, they absolutely fixed the Y2K date code issues. That was crucial for credibility. Their patches had to work on the surface level.
Like right underneath.
That's the betrayal. The book calls them Trojans of breathtaking elegance. Hidden within the legitimate Y2K fixes were other things.
Like what?
Encrypted data taps, network monitoring protocols that reported back to continuity, and the most critical part, hidden, persistent backdoors.
Giving continuity administrative access.
Administrative access, monitoring capabilities, potentially even control mechanisms, all embedded silently within the critical systems of governments and industries worldwide.
So every institution that accepted continuity's help to avert Y2K was unknowingly installing the very planetary-scale governor system Helen had dreamed up after Challenger.
Exactly, woven into the digital fabric of civilization. It wasn't a military takeover. It was a takeover via exploiting fear and offering a solution that contained hidden chains. Exploiting a flaw not just in code, but in human psychology, the willingness to trade freedom for the feeling of safety.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about the night itself. December 31st, 1999. The book gives us the scene inside Continuity's main control center, the archive.
Yeah, it's portrayed as this moment of ultimate triumph for Helen, but it's not a loud celebration. It's quiet observation.
The world is partying, relieved that the planes didn't fall, the banks didn't collapse.
Right, everyone breathes a sigh of relief, thinking they had this narrow escape.
But inside the archive,
Helen is watching her monitors. The reports are coming in. No major failures anywhere. The global system is stable. Her order held.
but there's more to it than just the absence of failure, isn't there?
Yes. The visual the author uses is unforgettable. The soft green glow of 1,000 new status icons lighting up across Helen's master display.
Each icon representing.
What? A segment of critical global infrastructure.
Yeah.
Power grids, financial networks, communications, transportation. All now confirmed, fully monitored, fully accessible, and silently governed by continuity.
They didn't just prevent the Y2K failure. They used the prevention effort to achieve pervasive, invisible control.
That was the real goal all along. Y2K wasn't the threat. It was the means to establish the order.
And the chapter ends with Helen's internal thought, right?
Yeah, that chillingly simple, definitive statement. The system was now stable. The order of operations was, at last, correct.
Correct. That's the word. It's the ultimate anti-logo statement, isn't it? Jaren seeks the universe's inherent, maybe chaotic, but discoverable language.
While Helen believes the universe is flawed and must be forced into correctness, shackled by her code, a global dictator in the machine, ensuring her order prevails.
So the Y2K operation, this culmination of Helen's work over a decade, it sets the stage perfectly for the main conflict.
Absolutely. Weaver does a fantastic job positioning Jaren and Helen as these two colossal forces. Not just rivals, but like you said, two sides of the same coin of genius, arriving at utterly opposite conclusions about reality.
Jaren's discovery of the Sinton in Chapter 5, it's revolutionary. Proof that the universe's source code is potentially editable. He found the language of reality.
Opening the door to true emergence, unpredictable change, maybe even rewriting physics. It's immense.
And Helen's Y2K success is the counter-revolution. It proves that the operating system of human civilization is now under her editorial control. She's built the firewall against that kind of emergence.
The anti-logos layer is in place globally.
Okay, so let's just take stock of the opposing forces as we head into the next act of the book. On one side, Jaren Miles, the Unraveler.
Armed with the Sinton, the logos, the word, pure information. And backed by those mysterious allies who responded to his signal back in Chapter 5.
Right, the entities that somehow communicated via a pure sine wave on disconnected equipment, suggesting power from outside the known system.
Definitely non-standard physics involved there.
And on the other side, continuity, led by Helen Castor, the regulator.
Armed with the order of operations, control, the system itself, plus seemingly infinite resources, personnel, tech.
And now, critically, architectural access woven into global infrastructure thanks to Y2K.
Yeah, that's their ace in the hole. Invisible, pervasive access.
So this explains why continuity is hunting Jaren so relentlessly, as hinted in Chapter 1.
It makes perfect sense from their perspective. Helen spent decades building a system designed to eliminate the chaotic, variable, unpredictable human factors, emergence.
She proved on New Year's Eve 1999 that her controlled system worked, it didn't fail.
And then Jaren comes along. By discovering the Sinton, by proving the fundamental rules of reality might be mere suggestions.
He introduces the ultimate chaotic variable. Something she can't predict, can't model, can't control.
He's not just a glitch in her system. He's a potential system reboot from an unknown source. He threatens the very stability she sacrificed everything to create.
He could unravel everything she built on Y2K night.
So, from continuity's viewpoint, he's not a pioneer. He's the final fatal error message for the world they manage. They have to silence him and contain the Sinton before it crashes their perfectly ordered reality.
The stakes are just immense. It's not good versus evil in a simple way.
No, it's much more fundamental. It's Jaren's belief in truth through emergence, freedom, even with risk, versus Helen's belief in safety through control, function, even at the cost of that freedom.
Order versus chaos. Control versus emergence. Stability versus truth.
Two terrifyingly brilliant people, both absolutely convinced they hold the key to humanity's survival on a collision course over the nature of reality itself. That's the Logos War. #tagoutro.
So Chapter 7 really delivers that counter-narrative, doesn't it? It gives us Helen's rationale, the chilling success of her methods, and sets up this huge conflict.
It forces you, the reader, to grapple with these two opposing philosophies head-on.
On the one side, You've got Jaren's path, pursuing the fundamental, maybe chaotic language of the universe, the logos,
Yeah.
embracing emergence, discovery, the power to create, even if the consequences are unknown.
The potential and the risk of true freedom.
And on the other, Helen's path, imposing a rigid, seemingly perfect structure, continuity to prevent failure, to shield humanity from its own perceived flaws.
Sacrificing that freedom for stability, for predictable function. Managed safety.
And the unsettling thing is, Helen's system worked. Y2K was a non-event because of her actions, her control. Order was maintained, functionality was preserved.
But Jaren's discovery, the Synton, implies that the very foundations of that order, the laws of physics themselves, are perhaps just guidelines, negotiable.
Which brings us to the core question Chapter 7 leaves us with, doesn't it? Considering that continuity now secretly governs global infrastructure.
Does Jaren's Synton represent a dangerous force that threatens to unravel the fragile stability Helen achieved? Is he the chaos variable she always feared?
Or is his knowledge, the logos itself, the only thing that could potentially expose and challenge continuity's hidden control? Is he the necessary disruption?
So the final thought to leave you with, which power is ultimately more dangerous? The knowledge that reality itself might be rewritten.
Or the hidden, unaccountable organization that has already rewritten the rules of our civilization and secretly governs its systems? Something to definitely chew on until our next deep dive into the Logos War. Thanks for joining us.